Army of Two: The 40th Day is peak 2010 gaming. In my last video covering the first Army of Two, I mentioned that I haven't played the sequels to it, and I asked you guys if I should play them, and oh brother, did you guys make it clear that I should definitely play them.
The 40th Day is one of the GOATs. Do 40th Day. Imo, it's the best in the Army of Two franchise. 40th Day was only Army of Two game I played was 40th Day, and please the AI is way better. The 40th Day is even better, and found customized games. My favorite Army of Two 40th Day was where it was at.
So I grabbed a copy of the 40th Day, I fired up my Xbox 360, and I immediately realized why I got so many comments telling me to play it and review it. And it's because this game is f***ing awesome. I'd like to take this moment to thank my channel members for supporting me. You can join these individuals on screen for only $1 a month. Let's get right into it. Let's rewind for just a second and set the stage. Army of Two: The 40th Day came out in 2010, just 2 years after the first game came out. Most big franchises at that time were on these tight 2-year development cycles. Halo 3 finished the fight 3 years after Halo 2's insane 1-year dev cycle. Gears of War 2 landed just 2 years after the first game came out.
That's 5 motherfuckers!
And Ezio's story in Assassin's Creed 2 birthed one of the largest franchises in gaming history, and that went from concept to release in only 2 short years. Even Call of Duty managed to release annually, but that's only because Infinity Ward and Treyarch were trading off releasing a game every other year, with each of them still working on a short 2-year development cycle. EA especially was built around that model, and not just for their annually released sports games. EA's games in that pre-gambling and pre-loot box era demanded quick turnarounds and high sales figures. Battlefield Bad Company came out in 2008, and by 2010, Bad Company 2 was already on store shelves. And the crazy thing, at least for me to remember, is that during that pre-live service, pre-microtransaction, pre-Twitch, and pre-YouTube gaming era, we didn't just get sequels, we got entire trilogies, sometimes whole franchises that started and ended on the same console. Mass Effect, Gears of War, Dead Space, Resistance, and of course, Army of Two. All of these franchises had trilogies that fit within the 8-year-long 7th generation console lifecycle. It was that period of rapid iteration that drove innovation in graphics, gameplay, and storytelling mechanics. New releases had that sense of growth or experimentation, or unfortunately, sometimes they just had bolted on trend-chasing mechanics. And for better or worse, Army of Two is a perfect snapshot of that golden era of gaming. After the events of the first game, our main duo Tyson Rios and Elliot Salem are running their PMC organization Trans World Operations in Shanghai. After completing a routine contract to plant some beacons on several skyscrapers, the city comes under attack. In one of the most insanely chaotic openings I've ever seen, we see massive explosions, skyscrapers toppling over, airplanes crashing down, and destruction everywhere. Where the first game felt like a Michael Bay action flick, the 40th Day immediately feels like a Roland Emmerich disaster piece. A terrorist army suddenly captures the city, rounding up civilians, destroying landmarks, and setting up security checkpoints everywhere. Rios and Salem don't know what's happening, who these guys are, or what they want. They only know one thing for certain. They need to get the hell out of Shanghai. Over the comms, Alice, their friend and the handler from the first game, guides them through the city to reach an evac zone. The path to safety forces them to fight through the forces in a mall, a hospital, a temple, and even the Shanghai Zoo. And as the pair finally reach their destination, they uncover the terrorist plans that put the entire city and their own fates on the line. So the first thing you'll notice with this sequel is the change to the visuals. They now sport a darker tone. The first game was very bright, maybe a little too bright. It definitely immediately gives you that feeling of a cheesy action movie. Here in the sequel, there's more reliance on shadows and a cinematic presentation, which sets the stage for the tonal shift that the game is going for. The graphics detail definitely got an uplift over the original, but this is still the Xbox 360 we're talking about, so draw distances are a little problematic, and there's still a ton of sharp edges. It's exactly as you'd expect for a game released only 4 years into the era of HD resolution capable consoles. And Rios and Salem, well, they look like they've been through some shit. Even the voice actors gotta change. Gone are the original voice actors. This time Tyson is voiced by Jonathan Adams, who would later go on to voice Tyrael in Diablo 3.
You cannot judge me. I am justice itself.
And Elliot Salem's voice actor was replaced by none other than the immediately recognizable Nolan f***ing North.
I say we collect what's coming to us and go home right goddamn now.
The presentation isn't the only part that got an overhaul. The entire game feels more refined, more epic, more badass. The system was updated in the wake of the development of third-person shooter mechanics during that era. It's a perfect example of how mechanics were shifting during the time and how just a few years of game releases, some with successes, some with failures, all resulted in a change in standardized and expected mechanics throughout the industry. In the first game, I complained that you didn't have control over when the camera would switch shoulders and that it instead would automatically switch shoulders whenever you were near a cover object. You'd just be praying that it would work, and the lack of control made it really annoying in the heat of battle. And thankfully, that complaint was fixed here, and with a simple press of the right stick, you can switch shoulders on the fly. The cover system also got a major rework. In the first Army of Two, they used the soft cover system. You'd crouch or you'd stand near a wall, and you just kind of hoped that it would work, or rather, you hoped that it didn't work so you could still slice the pie. But in 2 years between games, the success of Gears of War and Uncharted snap-to-cover systems had kicked off an industry trend that spread like wildfire. And it's worth remembering why the first game didn't have the snap-to-cover system in it. During its development up until its March 2008 release, the success of the snap-to-cover system found in Gears of War's November 2006 release was still unproven with players. But by 2010, gamers were expecting it. So of course the 40th Day uses the snap-to-cover system that players began to expect. You can even hold the A button to sprint and to dash into cover. And it feels way more refined than the first game, but every good thing comes at a cost. And the casualty here is the loss of being able to beam enemies while blind firing. Instead, you put on your best Taliban recruit impression and you just fire wildly over the cover. It all plays into the same aggro system that they set up in the first Army of Two, where one of the duo draws the enemy's attention while they're firing at them, but they tone this down too. The teammate without aggro doesn't get nearly as much invisibility in order to flank enemies. They also ditched the awesomely cheesy overkill buff that slowed down time, made the aggroed partner deal double damage, and made the other partner turn into an invisible assassin in plain sight. The whole aggro system feels way less impactful this time around. Still necessary in some situations, like against some of the heavy enemies that you'll have to flank, but far less necessary during the typical encounters. The level design felt more linear this time around, so I didn't really feel like I needed to get flanking positions most of the time anyway. The revive mechanic also got reworked, and not for the better. I praised the first game for letting me use my full loadout whenever I was down. The sight of firing a minigun from your ass while your partner drags you with one arm is just a perfect moment from that game. But of course, they removed the fun for the sequel, and you're stuck with only your lame ass pistol. At least they made it to where you can duck down lower when you're recovering your ally, and they made it faster so you're able to pick them up in more dangerous positions. And I don't know if they actually changed this, but for some reason linking up with your partner as they carry a shield also feels worse. I'm not sure why, maybe it has to do with the change in the arena design, but I pretty much avoided using the shields this time around, unlike in the first game where finding a shield was a gift from God. But they did at least make it to where the partner that's carrying the shield can aim and shoot their pistol while they're holding it, and they're not just forced to be the shield bitch. For some reason, they decided to completely remove the ability to change weapons with your partner. Why? Who the fuck knows? Maybe it was a consequence of the new weapon customization system, but we'll come back to that in a little bit. The partner cam also isn't persistently on your screen. In the first game, this was helpful for keeping tabs on enemies and figuring out where the enemy sightlines were as you looked for flanking opportunities, but nope, it's gone now. You can see it very briefly if you press and hold down on the D-pad, but then it slides off the screen once you let go. It does come back automatically when your partner goes to snipe an enemy. Oh, and speaking of, the co-op snipe is gone too. Instead, your partner just decides to pull out their sniper whenever they feel like it, and the partner cam will slide down to show them lining up the shot. Once it's lined up, they'll take the shot. And it turns out that enemies' heads can explode now.
Damn! He ain't gonna be in Rush Hour 3.
One of the coolest parts in the first game was when you'd go back to back spinning around shooting at the charging enemies. And hey, shout out to this comment from the last video. But sadly, this only happens like 3 times during the 40th day, and one of those times is this section against a bunch of charging enemies, some that have RPGs, and when you finally do get through it, the duo somehow survive taking a rocket launcher to their feet, and they end up waking up in captivity. But they did up the ante for the co-op Merc Bro antics at least a little bit. At checkpoints during the mission and on a score screen between chapters, you can compare your kill counts against each other. And I always remembered this score screen because it was always a competition to see who could have the most kills during the chapter. And during the downtime, you can still dap each other up, or you can smack each other to let out your frustration. And just like everything else, this time around the interactions are also more fleshed out. They even put in a rock, paper, scissors minigame to let you play against each other. This is just another great example of how they really wanted the co-op experience to be central to your enjoyment of the game. And playing this with a friend, a sibling, or a parent, you can't help but enjoy and remember these little touches. And the changes just keep on coming. Weapon customization got a massive overhaul. Just like the first game, you can earn money throughout the mission by killing enemies or completing certain objectives. But instead of only being able to change your loadout at specific checkpoints or between missions, this time around you can bring up the weapon customization screen at any time by holding the Y button and pressing down on the D-pad. You still have the same primary, secondary, and special weapon slots, but unfortunately they removed some of the fun, cool weapons like the minigun. They also only give you like 3 options for your secondary and like 5 options for your special weapon. Compare that to the whole screen full of options from the first game, and it's a little disappointing. But they made up for this by adding an absolute ton of options to the customization. Every gun has a boatload of different muzzles, suppressors, magazines, barrels, stocks, and even camos to choose from. And unlike the first game, it's not just like barrel 1 or barrel 2. No, it's way more than that. Hey, do you want to have an AK-47 barrel on your G36C? Because you can do that if you want. Or how about you take a Scar L and you put an M4 barrel and a QBZ-03 stock on it? Oh, and while you're at it, don't forget to throw on a 100-round drum mag. Do you want a suppressor? Well, here are about 6 different options to choose from. But if you're too broke for any of those, just duct tape a soda can to your barrel. Now you're ready to stealthily fill those terrorist bastards with your leftover drops of Mountain Dew game fuel. And you can even add a bayonet to your guns to skewer your enemies. There's a screwdriver bayonet, a standard bayonet, and this big ass knife.
That's a knife.
And if all of that weren't enough, they also gave you the option to put a second primary weapon into your special weapon slot, and both of the weapons show up on your character model in-game. Now listen here, I'm not going to cover all of the weapons that are in the game because I don't know or care enough about the specifics of real-world weapons to review the options that they chose. There's a good mix of shotguns, assault rifles, SMGs, and light machine guns. And if you have a save from the first army of 2, you can unlock a few locked guns. But from a gameplay perspective, for some reason, they made the RPG incredibly weak with a tiny blast radius. It's pretty much a trap every time you use it, which probably explains why Rios and Salem survived that rocket that I mentioned earlier. And it's actually insane the amount of customization available. There are all these different colorful camos for the weapons like tiger print, zebra stripes, blue urban camos, even a Vegas themed camo. And of course, there's Army of Two's signature pimped option to make every gun made of gold and silver.
I love gold!
And each component has different stats impacting the weapon's aggro generation, handling for when you're blind firing, precision for recoil and aiming down sights, and of course there's the damage stat. And all of the different camos also impact the aggro stat. They even added in something that I thought was lacking in the first game, scopes, as well as the ability to put on or take off a scope or a suppressor on the fly by holding the Y button and hitting one of the bumpers. And thank fuck they added the scopes. The 3x scope on my Orange Tiger M416 ended up carrying me through some of the hardest sections of the game. Most of the time I was just staying back, scoped in, sniping enemies with what I later found out is the best rifle in the game with the M416. But if enemies got too close for comfort, they got to feel the sting of my zebra striped M249 saw. Now, I do have two main issues with the weapon customization here. First, even though there are a ton of options, most of them are feeling a little too similar to really be in the mix for potential options that you're going to use, and they don't really feel any different in the game, so I kind of just naturally metagame myself into picking the option with the best stats, usually high damage and high precision. My second issue is that you can spend lots of time in the customization screen getting your gear all kitted out, ready to rock and roll, and then suddenly you die when you take a rocket to the face. And when you die, you get reset back to a checkpoint that happened before you did all your customizations, and it doesn't save all the changes that you made, so you have to redo all of the customizations again. There was this one section where I didn't have a scope going into the encounter, but I definitely needed one, and I was using a weapon that was not my M416, so I was going to switch to that and I needed to upgrade it. And this section was so difficult that I just kept dying over and over again for like 2 hours of playtime. I ended up having to turn off the stream and try it again the next day. And every time that I would restart at the checkpoint, I had to open up the weapon customization screen and redo all of my changes. Eventually, I just settled into the loadout that I mentioned earlier, and I didn't touch the weapon customization screen except to spend my extra cash on more primary weapon ammo or diamond encrusted grenades. Yeah, diamond encrusted grenades. I just spent the last 10 minutes talking about all the changes from the first game, and I haven't even talked about any of the new features that they added brand new to the series. The main theme for the new features comes as a result of the industry's advancements into morality and karma systems and player choice with story or gameplay consequences. From 2006 to 2010, we saw a whole host of games implementing these systems to great fanfare. Games like Fallout 3, Fable, Infamous, and BioShock all use these systems. Throughout the game, you'll stumble onto the terrorists taking civilian hostages. If you're able to save the hostages, you'll earn extra cash and some positive morality. But if you alert the guards or you fail to take them out fast enough, they'll end up executing the hostages. Or you can just be a dumbass like me and accidentally throw a grenade at the hostages and blow them to smithereens after you've already saved them. And I didn't realize it until I got to the final mission, but apparently if you save enough civilians throughout the game, they'll show up to help you on your final push. But unfortunately, I didn't save enough of them, and the game was all too willing to let me know how much I f***ed up. A new gameplay feature is the ability to grab enemies and use them as human shields. You can do this during the combat, but you'll mostly do this when the game presents you with an opportunity to sneak up on the enemies. If you grab an officer, the grunts that are around will surrender, which is a nice touch. While you have an officer held and the grunts are surrendering, the other partner can walk over and tie down the surrendering force, earning you positive morality, or you can just choose to execute everyone and lower your morality. And this isn't necessarily related to the morality system, but I really couldn't figure out where else to put this into the script. But there are these instances where you'll round a corner to approach a door only to walk right into an ambush. You can press a button to fake surrender, dropping to your knees while an enemy officer calls in that they've captured you. And if you wait too long, they'll get the order to execute you. But if you press the right trigger, you can quick draw your sidearm, entering into slow-mo to take them all out. And you can do this as a duo, meaning you'd better be on the same page when one of you decides it's time to turn the tables. The whole thing is a little ridiculous and it's a good laugh. I laughed my ass off when I was able to empty an entire mag, reload, empty a second mag, all before these guys could take down someone that they captured. Throughout the levels, you'll stumble upon these caches. These contain special weapon attachments, new weapons, or just a boatload of cash. In order to get them, you have to take out the officers that are guarding it before they can signal for it to be closed, which is much harder than it looks. I messed this up more than a few times and I missed out on some good bonuses. But the main big new addition comes in the story moments where the player is presented with a simple binary choice, usually one good karma option and one bad karma option. We saw this similar system play out in Sony's PlayStation 3 exclusive Infamous. We also saw this in BioShock with the choice to rescue or harvest the little sisters, but the system also has its criticisms, mostly because when it's used, the choices are usually shallow and have very little impact outside of the ending cutscene. In Infamous's case, you were punished for not sticking to the evil or the good path, so you always had to choose one or the other. And in BioShock, if you chose to rescue the little sisters, you'd still get a bunch of Adam really late into the game, evening out the two options and making it pretty pointless to choose the harvest route. And both only had the consequences really impact the story during the final cutscenes. And the 40th Day used this same system, and it does some things right, but it also falls into some of the same traps. For one, they usually set up a reward that you'll be getting if you pick the bad option, making it actually pretty enticing and making it a tough choice. But pretty quickly you learn that the decisions you make are never black and white. Things never play out like you'd expect, and even making what you think is the morally right decision can be completely misguided and result in even worse outcomes. In the second mission, Rios and Salem come across a weapons locker that has some nice weapons in it. Before they can take the weapons though, a security guard confronts them and we get a choice of whether to take the weapons or to leave the weapons. I chose to take the weapons, which unlocks the M416, but...
Get that out of my face.
What the hell was that?
I barely touched him.
After you make a choice, it goes to a comic book cutscene, and in this one we see the security guard has a daughter that finds him and his gun, and the unaliving of the little girl is implied. If you instead choose to return the weapons, it turns out that the guard was going to resell them to the terrorists anyway. For the next option, Rios and Salem find themselves at the Shanghai Zoo, and there's this rare white tiger in a cage with a really good gun apparently, and the choice is whether to let the tiger go, leaving the gun behind, or kill the tiger so you can go into the cage and get the gun. And both outcomes are pretty wild. If you let the tiger go, it roams the streets and it jumps into this car that turns out to be the getaway car for some thief. When the thief gets into his car, the tiger strikes. And the other option makes you feel like a bastard as you learn that the tiger species is now extinct after you killed the last one. And all that just for a weapon stock and a bayonet. During the hospital mission, Rios and Salem find this kid that helps them find their way out. Short Round is scavenging the hospital trying to get some medicine for his sick parents. During an ambush by some snipers, you're presented with the option to have the kid run under the table to grab this sniper that got left behind, and he can give you some suppressing fire, or you can choose to let him hide. If you send him to get the sniper, he helps repel the enemies, but gets shot while he's celebrating. The cutscenes are pretty standard, showing his family grieving for him, not a whole lot here. But if he hides, he ends up surviving all the way to the end, and the cutscene has this twist where his parents aren't actually sick, but instead they're being held hostage. The kid was sent to go find the drugs for the captors, and when he hands the drugs over to the captors, he pulls out a gun that he took from the hospital and he drops them. The rewards are different for each of the choices that you make here too. If the kid grabs the sniper, you unlock the M107 50 cal sniper. If the kid survives, the doctor gives you a stack of cash. But if you've been a good boy for all the morality choices up until this point, the doctor at the hospital tosses you a Glock. And the last one I want to talk about really stands out to me. After Rios and Salem eat that rocket that I mentioned earlier, they wake up in prison cells that are set up in a mall. They escape with the help of this Russian PMC dude from a different organization. Of course, being Russian, his name is Victor, with a K. Victor tells us that he escaped from Russia, and at the end of the mission, he sends Rios and Salem off while he goes into a storeroom to take care of some business. Salem investigates and he finds a woman tied up in there, which is obviously implying some R word is about to take place. Rios and Salem are against letting him commit such an atrocity, but Victor offers them a crap ton of money if they'll just turn and look the other way. And being that I wanted to maintain Salem and Rios's main character traits, because you know, these guys were Army Rangers after all, I chose to stop Victor, which meant that the two shot Victor, then kicked his gun over to the woman and they left the scene. But it turns out in the cutscenes that the woman was actually a KGB assassin sent to find and assassinate Victor and his family for defecting from Russia. So she leaves Victor to bleed out, then goes to the hospital that Victor's wife is at and kills her just after she had their baby. But just before she kills the baby, Victor somehow gets there and shoots her in the back. It's a dark and disturbing twist that I didn't see coming, and it kinda hit me in the feels. But unfortunately, outside of all that, the choices you make have no impact on the story, save for the choice made during the final cutscene. But ultimately, I hate the implementation here because it removes any sense of finality or canonical storytelling from the mix. By the end of the game, you make all of your choices, they have their impact on the small moments, but since none of it's canon, there's no story actually being told by the developers. There's no progression or character arcs or even callbacks to what you've chosen. And that all comes around to bite the trilogy in the ass when they had to settle on a canonical ending for the 40th day in order to tie into the story for the third entry, The Devil's Cartel. But we'll come back to The Devil's Cartel in a later video. If you're interested in seeing that, let me know in the comments below. Maybe click that subscribe button while you're down there. And with that, I think it's time we wrap this up by talking about the story and the final chapter. So throughout the game, you're basically just shuffling from one locale to the next, fighting off the terrorist forces, and there's basically nothing told to you about who these guys are or what they're trying to do. Instead, you're just focused on getting through to the evac zone. Occasionally, you'll see some posters that are posted on the walls that say the 40th day, but they don't really say anything or mean anything. You're just kind of going through the motions. You can collect radios throughout the missions that contain audio logs that help kind of fill in the backstory of what's going on. But in order to listen to them, you have to stop the action, go into the menu, and sit with your thumb up your ass while it plays out. And I hate that shit. If I can't walk around and listen to the audio log, I'm not listening to it. And it turns out that most of the story is in these audio logs. You may have noticed that I've been calling the enemy forces just terrorists or army or whatever I've been saying. And that's because their name is never actually said in the game. Instead, if you like to just sit and listen to audio logs, you can find out that they're actually called the 40th day, and listening is the only way that you'll uncover why the 40th day is doing what they're doing and why their leader is motivated to do what he's doing. But since it's only in the audio logs, and I'm not gonna sit there and listen to those, then I'm not even gonna spend the time to research it. If that drastically changes the story and how much enjoyment of this game I would have, well, then I guess they should have put it in the game. So reaching the final mission, you finally learn that the 40th day's leader is named Jonah. Rios and Salem don't even give a shit about going after him. They really just want to get the hell out of the city. But at the evac point, the helicopter that's carrying Alice to come pick up Rios and Salem gets shot down and crashes into a building. Then the two just decide that they've had enough and they want to go after Jonah to get revenge for killing Alice. And yeah, Alice actually died in that helicopter crash. 2 games of being their handler and their friend for almost 25 years, and the voice that you hear in your comms for the entirety of both games. And she dies like that. I actually thought that we'd get some scene where Alice escaped the chopper because there's no way in hell they just ended her like that. I mean, there's a little ambiguity with it all the way that it played out, but nope, she's dead.
I want to kill him.
Kill who?
Jonah. I just need one clean shot at him.
Then let's do it.
The final mission takes place at this temple, and you climb the many stairs to reach the top of the tower and confront Jonah, and this mission is an absolute slog. Most of the time it's difficult because the checkpoints are few and far between, and the arenas themselves aren't set up to give you much cover. Oh, and I should mention that I'm playing this on the hardest difficulty because I figured that would be way more fun. And when you finally reach the top of the tower and blow open the door with C4, the pair finally meet and confront Jonah. Jonah turns out to be some sort of retired or discharged US military general. He says that the 40th Day Army has been planting a nuclear bomb in the city so that they can destroy it and rebuild the city from the ashes. He holds a detonator to the bomb, and he offers the pair a choice. Either kill him, detonating the nuclear bomb and wiping out the civilians and the 40th Day Army, or they can choose to sacrifice their partner and he'll call off his troops and evacuate the city. Why he gives them these options, I really don't know. There are 4 different outcomes for this morality decision, and if you're playing in co-op, it'll play out differently based on whoever actually is the one who hit the button. If Rios or Salem choose to kill Jonah, the person who clicked the button will be the one that fires into his chest and deals the killing blow. The two then stare at each other in fear as they wait for the bomb to go off. Then it transitions over to showing the 40th day troops capturing the city while Rios and Salem escape on a helicopter. We then hear Jonah's voiceover explaining the book of Genesis.
Jonah warned the city of Nineveh they had 40 days until God would overthrow the city. The people repented in those 40 days and God spared the city. Or so it was written. But the people could not change, and the cities were not spared. And so we open our hearts to wrath, for it is written, "Vengeance is mine. I will repay, saith the Lord."
And the credits roll, and there was never even a bomb. What an absolute EA level choke job. They had the perfect chance to hit you right in the chest and shock you to your core and make this game worth playing and worth buying and worth telling your friends to buy, but nope. My guess is that if they detonated a nuke in Shanghai, then it would have pissed off China and they would have lost access to being able to sell games over there. And this is EA we're talking about. They're not going to give up a chance to sell their games in China. And going back to the decision, if either Rios or Salem choose to shoot their partner, Jonah will call off the attacks. Then the survivor kills him. So yeah, there's no actual ending here. And I really hate when games do this shit. I mean, it's made even worse by the fact that you just don't care about stopping Jonah because you don't even know who the hell Jonah is until about 15 or 20 minutes before you have to make this decision. And while researching and writing all of this, I stumbled upon a minor spoiler about the Devil's Cartel, which kind of sucks because I was hoping to go in blind like I always do. But at some point during the Devil's Cartel, Rios and Salem are arguing and Elliot says that he laid his life down for Rios to save Shanghai, implying that Rios shooting Salem is the canonical ending. Which is really confusing because the ending where Rios shoots Salem caps off with this voiceover from Rios as he's the only one in the helicopter.
With the hostage threat revealed as a lie, the Red Army entered Shanghai within an hour. The UN followed. I came to this city with the only friend I had left, and I'm leaving alone. No matter what anyone tells me, that I did what I thought was right, that anyone else would have done what I did, I will never forgive myself for not having the courage. I'll never forgive myself for bending to the will of a madman. I'll just never forget.
So you can really tell that the writers for the Devil's Cartel were just backed into a corner, and they somehow had to write Salem back into the story.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Now, Army of Two, the 40th Day is a hot mess, but at least it's a fun hot mess. I know game review scales are just complete bullshit, but this is a legitimate 7 out of 10 fun experience that's a little rough around the edges. There are some really great things in this game, like all the customization and the combat reliance on real co-op, unlike games like Gears of War, where you can just sort of get through the game without ever needing to rely on your partner. There are some really cool extras in the game worth mentioning too, just cool shit that you don't see anymore. Like after beating the game, you unlock cheats that let you have infinite ammo or enable a big head mode. Nothing too crazy, but it's a nice little addition. There's even a PSP spin-off, which looks a little rough and turned the game into a twin stick shooter. And can I even call it a twin stick shooter if the PSP only had one joystick? But beating the PSP version with all the good choices unlocks a skin to play as Isaac Clarke from Dead Space, and doing all of the bad choices unlocks Dante from Dante's Inferno. I really wish they would have added these to the main game because that would have been so sweet. But the real highlight is the added option to make your own custom masks. By going to armyof2.com, you could create your own custom mask that you could then send back to your game. And what an awesome player-friendly addition. Something like this would never be added to a game made by EA these days. If it was, you'd probably have to pay like, I don't know, $1.99 every time you wanted to make a new mask. And, you know, just like all good things, EA had to ruin it. They took the website down so you can no longer make your custom masks or send it back to your game, and they took the servers down. There was an online competitive multiplayer mode, but no one really played that, and it's gone now that the servers are down, so that's that. You can't even play co-op online anymore because for some reason it had to go through their servers, and that's the really sad part here. The 40th Day also isn't backwards compatible on modern Xbox consoles or on the PS4 or PS5, so if you really want to play this game the way it was meant to be played, you better have a PS3 or an Xbox 360 and a friend or a family member that's willing to sit on a couch together with you for about 5 or 6 hours. But if you do, you will find one of the best co-op shooting experiences from the golden era. The game is just full of all of the ups and downs and the risks and rewards of developing games from that era, and it will just fill you with that pure elation that comes from sitting next to someone, shouting for suppressive fire, telling them to flank the enemies, or just yelling back to back and then taking down every enemy that's charging at you. So in conclusion, I'm really glad that I listened to all your comments and played Army of Two: The 40th Day. It's not often that I get to play a game that's, actually fun for this channel, and I definitely had fun playing this one. And like I've been saying, it really is just a perfect example of what gaming was like back in 2010. All of the chasing newly developed trends, making some sweeping changes between the sequels, and cutting corners to meet those short dev cycles, but still being able to deliver a memorable co-op experience at the core of the game. It's not this bloated $100 million budget project like you'd get today that's just chasing player retention numbers or microtransactions or recurring revenue figures, and it's definitely not pushing some Twitter-developed, chronically online, bullied theater kids worldview onto the player. It's just this weird-ass, scrappy co-op shooter that just wants you to have fun with it. Well, now I'm looking forward to playing The Devil's Cartel for the first time ever. If you're interested in seeing my review of that game, be sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments below. I also stream every game that I review, so be sure to watch for when I go live, and you can come chat and hang out while I'm playing games from the golden era. Thanks again to all my channel members for supporting me. If you'd like to join the channel and have your name listed here on screen, you can do so for only $1 a month. With that, I'm Ice Cold Snake. I'll see you next time.